What kind of father sends his own daughter into Oregon's rain-soaked wilderness and calls it mercy? In 1884, 27-year-old Clara Voss had spent 12 years secretly balancing the books that built her father's Portland timber empire. But when she uncovered payments to dead laborers and acreage the company did not legally own, Harlan Voss branded his plus-sized daughter a thief and exiled her to a failing sawmill beyond Black Fern Ridge. Its owner, Elias Rourke, was a scarred giant accused of killing the last man who tried to seize his land. Clara expected chains, hunger, or an Unmarkgrau. Instead, Rourke asked why her father feared the small ledger hidden beneath her coat. What was buried inside its columns, and why had armed riders followed her into the mountains? Rain struck the tall windows of the Voss Timber Exchange on October 18, 1884, turning Portland's streets into black ribbons of mud. Inside the second-floor meeting room, 40 investors sat beneath brass lamps, while Clara Voss stood alone at the end of a polished walnut table. She had balanced her father's accounts since she was 15. At 27, Clara could trace a missing dollar through 6 ledgers faster than most trained bankers could find it in one. Yet none of the men present looked at the papers in her hands. Their eyes lingered instead on the broad hips her brown wool dress could not conceal, and the chair Harlan Voss had deliberately removed before the meeting began. Her father remained seated at the head of the table. "Tell them what you found," he said. Clara opened the payroll ledger. 14 men received wages during the last quarter, although county records show that 6 of them are dead. A murmur passed through the room. She placed 3 timber maps beside the book. The company also collected advance payments for cutting rights on 1,800 acres near Black Fern Ridge. "Those acres do not belong to us." Edwin Pike, her father's business manager, leaned back with a thin smile. "Are you accusing this company of fraud?" "I am saying the numbers cannot all be true." Clara produced a narrow black ledger from her accounting case. For 3 months, she had copied every suspicious payment before the original entries could disappear. The false payroll, the non-existent acreage, and a series of unexplained transfers all led to the same account marked only with the initials B, F, R. Harlan's expression did not change until he saw the black book. Then his right hand tightened around the silver head of his cane. "You were forbidden to remove company records," he said. "These are my copies. Copies you altered." The door opened. A county deputy entered carrying a bank voucher bearing Clara's signature. It showed that $3,200 had been withdrawn from a workers' relief fund and transferred to an account registered in her name. Clara examined it once and immediately saw the flaw. This was written with violet copying pencil. "Our office did not purchase those pencils until September. The voucher is dated July." No one answered. She looked at Pike. A violet pencil rested beside his hand. Harlan rose slowly. "My daughter has always possessed an unfortunate appetite for food. Attention. And now, it seems, money." Several investors lowered their eyes. 2 laughed quietly. Heat climbed Clara's neck, but she refused to fold her hands across her body, as she had been taught to do whenever people stared. "You know I did not take that money." "What I know," Harlan replied, "is that your signature appears on a legal withdrawal." He gave her a choice designed to sound merciful. Clara could remain in Portland and face arrest for embezzlement, or she could accept a 6-month bookkeeping position at the Black Fern sawmill. Her wages would supposedly repay the missing money. The room became restless at the name of the mill. Black Fern stood beyond the last reliable wagon road in Oregon's Coast Range. Its owner, Elias Rourke. He was said to be a scarred giant who slept beside a loaded shotgun. 3 survey crews had fled his ridge. The last man who attempted to seize his mill had disappeared near the river, and people whispered that Rourke had buried him beneath the sawdust yard. Clara understood the real bargain. Her father was not offering employment. He was removing the only person who had recognized the pattern in his accounts. "If I go," she said, "the criminal complaint is withdrawn." Harlan nodded. "Provided you surrender every company document before leaving." Clara looked around the table. These men had praised her arithmetic when it increased their dividends. Now not one would risk Harlan's displeasure to defend her. She closed the official payroll ledger and pushed it toward him. Then she handed over her accounting case. Harlan searched it personally. He examined every compartment before passing the empty case to Pike. Neither man noticed that Clara had slipped the narrow black ledger through a torn seam in the lining of her coat. "I will leave for Black Fern tomorrow," she said. For the first time that evening, her father smiled. When Clara stepped outside, the rain had extinguished every street lamp except one. A closed carriage waited at the curb. Although she had not ordered it, its driver wore no company badge. And beneath his coat, she saw the outline of a revolver. "Mr. Voss said I was to take you home," he told her. Clara looked back at the glowing windows above. Harlan was watching from behind the glass. She climbed into the carriage with the evidence pressed against her ribs and understood that her exile had already begun. The carriage did not take Clara to the Voss mansion's front entrance. It stopped beside the servants' courtyard, where her father's business manager waited beneath a black umbrella. Edwin Pike opened the door. "Mr. Voss has ordered the household not to assist you." Inside, Clara found 2 plain dresses, a wool coat, and a pair of walking boots piled on her bed. Her books, jewelry, and personal correspondence had been removed. Even the portrait of her mother was gone. Harlan waited in the library with a contract laid across his desk. "The embezzlement complaint has been prepared but not filed," he said. "Your cooperation will determine whether it reaches the county prosecutor." The document appointed Clara temporary bookkeeper of the Black Fern sawmill for 6 months. Her stated duty was to reconcile $18,700 in debt allegedly owed to the Voss Timber Company. Clara read every line twice. "These charges include transportation fees for lumber that was never shipped." "Then make the entries agree." "You want me to certify a lie. I want you to remember who gave you the education that allows you to recognize one." Harlan explained that Elias Rourke had refused 3 offers to sell the mill and the surrounding riverfront. Without access to that property, Voss Timber could not float logs from its newly purchased forest to the Columbia River. A road would cost too much. A mill and log flume at Black Fern would solve the problem. Rourke believes stubbornness is the same as ownership. Harlan said, "The debt will teach him otherwise. And if the debt is fraudulent, then I suggest you avoid discovering that." Clara finally understood why her father had framed her instead of simply dismissing her. He needed a trained bookkeeper to give false accounts the appearance of legitimacy. If she obeyed, her signature would help him seize Black Fern. If she refused, the forged bank voucher would be used to imprison her. Harlan slid a pen across the desk. Clara signed only the acknowledgement confirming that she had received the assignment. She carefully left the debt certification section blank. His eyes narrowed. But he accepted it. "You depart before sunrise." After he left, Clara examined the coat prepared for her. One sleeve had been crudely widened, while the waist remained painfully narrow, whether through carelessness or deliberate humiliation. It was the only warm garment she had been given. She took a needle from the abandoned sewing basket and opened the inner seam. The black ledger fit flat between the wool and its lining. She stitched it closed with small, even loops, then put the coat on despite the tightness across her ribs. Shortly before 5, the next morning, Pike escorted her to a freight wagon driven by a silent man named Colin Webb. Clara was permitted 1 carpet bag. The mansion doors remained shut as the wagon rolled away. For 2 days, they traveled west through ceaseless rain. Portland's brick buildings gave way to muddy farms, then to dense walls of fir and cedar. The road narrowed until branches scraped both sides of the wagon. At night, Clara slept fully dressed in crowded way stations, keeping the coat beneath her head. On the 3rd morning, Webb stopped at a fork marked by a weathered sign, "Black Fern, 11 miles. The upper road washed out last week." He said, "Rourke's men use the river trail now. Then we take the river trail." Webb studied her as if she had misunderstood. "People in the last settlement said Rourke killed a company surveyor. Did anyone find the body?" No. Then they found a story. Not a body. She could have turned back. A mail wagon was due to travel east that afternoon, but returning to Portland meant arrest. And leaving Black Fern's accounts unexamined meant surrendering 1,800 acres and 12 mill families to her father. Clara chose the river trail, Bedusk. The wagon emerged above a valley filled with rain and wood smoke. A wide mill straddled a violent stream below. Its enormous saw screamed through a Douglas fir log while workers rolled timber across wet platforms. Then a bell rang once. Every man in the yard stopped. A tall figure in a dark canvas coat crossed the mill bridge. A pale burn scar ran from his right temple to the edge of his jaw. 2 fingers were missing from his left hand. But the long-barreled rifle in his right remained perfectly steady. Elias Rourke looked first at Clara. Then at the Voss emblem, painted on the wagon. "I told your father I wouldn't sell," he said. Clara stepped down into the mud. "He did not send me to purchase your mill." Rourke's expression hardened. "Then he sent you here to help him steal it." The mill bell rang a second time, and the machinery fell silent. Without the shriek of the great saw, Clara could hear rain striking the roof and water hammering against the bridge. Supports affanted, 2 supports. Nearly 30 workers watched from the platforms. Some stared at the Voss emblem on the wagon. Others looked openly at Clara. Colin Webb climbed down and handed Elias a sealed envelope. "Delivery order from Mr. Pa. Voss. I don't accept his orders. I was paid to bring the woman and obtain your signature." Elias's jaw tightened. "Her name is Clara Voss. If you call her a delivery again, you'll leave without your teeth." Webb glanced at the rifle and stepped backward. Elias opened the envelope without lowering his weapon. Harlan's letter claimed that Clara had volunteered to reconcile Black Fern's accounts. It also promised that her final certification would determine whether the Voss company pursued foreclosure. Clara watched Elias read it twice. "My father left out the part where he threatened me with prison." Elias raised his eyes to her. "Can you prove that?" "Not yet." "Then we have the same problem. I know he's lying. But knowing and proving are different trades." A mill worker with a red beard nodded toward Clara's carpet bag. "Should we search her before she starts copying our records?" Elias turned his head. "No one touches her or her property." The worker's smile vanished. Elias returned his attention to Clara. His stare was hard. But it did not travel over her body or linger on the coat stretched tightly around her waist. "You have 3 choices," he said. "Webb can take you back to the last settlement. You can remain in the bunkhouse until the Tuesday mail wagon arrives. Or you can enter the mill and explain exactly what Harlan wants you to sign." Clara had expected commands. Instead, the most feared man on Black Fern Ridge was offering her more freedom than her own father had allowed in years. "I want to see the accounts." That was not one of the choices. "It is the reason he sent me. It may also be the reason he framed me." For the first time, something shifted behind Elias's guarded expression. Webb interrupted them. "I need Rourke's signature." "You need to leave," Elias replied. The driver climbed back onto the wagon. He turned it so sharply that one wheel struck a stack of cut boards, scattering them into the mud. Then he headed toward the river trail without looking back. Clara was left standing in the rain with one carpet bag and no legal document proving that Elias had agreed to receive her. A sudden metallic crack sounded above them. One of the chains guiding a suspended log had slipped from its wheel. The enormous trunk swung sideways over the loading platform. Workers scattered as it struck a railing and shattered 2 wooden posts. Elias crossed the distance in seconds. He seized a young worker by the back of his coat and dragged him away before the rolling trunk crushed his leg. Then Elias slammed a release lever with his damaged hand, dropping the log into a holding trench. The platform shook. When the danger passed, blood ran from Elias's palm where the lever had torn open an old scar. He wrapped the hand in a strip of cloth and ordered the foreman to inspect every chain before restarting the mill. He did not shout. No one disobeyed. Clara noticed 3 spare chains hanging beneath the roof. According to the brass tags attached to them, all had been purchased during the previous month. Yet the chain that had nearly killed a worker was rusted almost through. "Who supplies your machinery?" she asked. "Voss Timber." Then someone charged this mill for new chains and delivered used ones. Elias looked toward the broken links. It was a small discrepancy compared with $18,700. But it was something Clara understood. A number had promised one object while reality supplied another. Elias gestured toward a stone building behind the mill. The office has a stove. You can dry yourself there. And the accounts, you may inspect them for 7 days. You will not remove a page. And I will keep your father's letter as evidence, as a reminder that neither of us should trust the other too quickly. He led her into an office containing a desk, a locked cabinet, and shelves crowded with payroll books. Before leaving, Elias placed the key to the inner room on the desk. That room is yours. It locks from inside. No man at Black Fern will enter without your permission. Clara waited until the door closed. Then she removed her wet coat, opened its hidden seam, and retrieved the black ledger. She compared her copies with the first Black Fern account book. Within minutes, she found 6 payments the mill had sent to Portland. Every dollar had disappeared before reaching the company's official records. Then she saw the authorization initials beneath those payments, C.V. They were written in an imitation of Clara's hand. The earliest entry was dated 18 months before she had ever heard the name Black Fern. Her father had not merely framed her to silence an inconvenient witness. Someone had been using Clara's identity to steal from Elias Rourke long before she arrived. Clara carried the Black Fern account book to the mill floor. Where Elias was supervising repairs to the broken lifting chain, I found my initials on 6 payment authorizations. She said, "They are forged." Elias wiped sawdust from his damaged hand. "Can you prove they aren't yours? The slant is wrong. The letters are too carefully matched. And the ink was used 18 months before my father gave me access to company authorizations. That proves the writing is suspicious. It doesn't prove who wrote it." Clara appreciated that he did not accept her claim merely because they shared an enemy. "I need the remaining books." Elias led her back to the office, but did not immediately unlock the cabinet. Instead, he summoned the mill foreman, Tobias Reed, and Beatrice Ward, the widowed boarding house keeper, who prepared meals for the workers. In front of both witnesses, Elias removed 11 account books, 3 payroll volumes, and a bundle of freight receipts. Clara recorded the title and condition of each item. Tobias then signed the inventory. "No page leaves this office." Elias said, "Mrs. Ward will hold the second key. If you need a locked book, one of us must be present when it is opened." Clara nodded. "And every calculation I make will be copied twice. You keep 1 copy. I keep the other." Elias considered the proposal before offering his hand. 7 days. Clara looked at the old scars crossing his palm, then shook it. 7 days. Beatrice showed Clara to the inner room. It contained a narrow bed, a washstand, and a small window overlooking the mill pond. Someone had recently repaired the door latch and placed a wooden wedge beside it. Mr. Rourke fixed that after hearing Voss was sending a woman. Beatrice explained. He said, "A lock should never depend on whether the man outside respects it." Clara glanced through the open doorway. Elias had already returned to the mill floor. Beatrice offered her a dry blue dress and a heavier coat that had belonged to her sister. She did not disguise the offer as charity or suggest Clara should apologize for needing a larger garment. "You may alter them however you like," she said. "No one should have to work while trapped inside badly measured cloth." That evening, Clara joined the workers in the boarding house dining room. Conversation stopped when she entered. A few men shifted their chairs away from her Voss-made coat. Tobias remained standing. "My brother lost 40 acres after your father claimed he owed transportation charges. Why should any of us trust his daughter?" "You should not," Clara replied. "Not until my work gives you a reason." The answer unsettled him more than an argument would have. Beatrice placed stew, bread, and roasted apples on the table. Clara chose a chair near the end. But Elias moved the oil lamp, so she would have enough light to examine a freight receipt she had brought with her. He did not defend her family. He did not ask the workers to welcome her. He simply ensured she had the same food, light, and space as everyone else. After supper, Clara returned to the office. Rain rattled the window while she followed payment entries backward through 3 years of records. Black Fern had paid for new machinery parts, medical supplies, bridge lumber, and winter food. Yet many of those goods had either arrived, damaged, or never arrived at all. The fraudulent charges were not random. They had weakened the mill gradually, making every breakdown appear to be Elias's failure. Shortly before midnight, Clara heard footsteps outside. The office door opened. She extinguished her lamp and moved silently to the inner doorway. A figure crossed the outer room without lighting a lantern. Whoever it was knew exactly where the floorboards creaked and avoided each one. The cabinet key turned. Clara tightened her fingers around the iron fireplace poker. Before she could step forward, a second sound came from the porch. The unmistakable click of a rifle hammer being drawn back. "Take your hand out of that cabinet," Elias said from outside, "and turn around slowly." The intruder shoved the office door into Elias and ran through the rear exit. Elias followed. But the darkness and heavy rain swallowed the fleeing figure among the lumber stacks. Clara relit the lamp. Nothing appeared to be missing. Then she noticed one freight receipt lying on the floor beside the open cabinet. A muddy thumbprint covered the supplier's name, but the final line remained visible. The replacement chains had been received and approved by Tobias Reed, the same foreman Elias had trusted to witness the inventory. Elias returned from the lumber yard after 20 minutes. Soaked and empty-handed, the tracks ended at the river. He said, "Whoever broke in knew where the stones would hide his footprints." Clara placed the freight receipt beside the inventory Tobias had signed earlier. At first glance, the signatures appeared identical, under the stronger light of the desk lamp. However, she found 3 differences. "The signature is genuine," she said. "The delivery list is not." The words "lifting chains" had been squeezed between 2 original lines. They were written with a narrower pen nib, and the altered total had been scraped away before being rewritten. Elias summoned Tobias. The foreman's face drained of color when he saw the receipt. "I signed for pulley grease, files, and 2 crosscut saws. There were no chains." "Why sign?" Before checking every line, Elias asked. "I did check it." Clara pointed to the cramped edition. "The chains were inserted after you signed." Tobias looked from the receipt to Clara. "Then why would someone break in and leave this where you could find it? To make us accuse you before we examined it." The intruder had not attempted to steal evidence. He had planted evidence designed to divide Black Fern from within. At-dam. Clara began inspecting the current week's shipment records. Each finished bundle leaving the mill carried a branded number. Tobias recorded those numbers in his yard book. While the freight contractor prepared the invoice sent to Portland, the first 2 days matched. On the 3rd day, 15 bundles disappeared between Tobias's record and the company invoice. They had not vanished from the yard. Black Fern had cut, stacked, and loaded them. But Voss Timber had never credited the mill for their value. Clara checked the previous 6 shipments. The same pattern appeared in 5 of them. The shortages were small enough to resemble careless counting. Yet together, they represented more than $400, nearly an entire month's payroll. A freight wagon arrived before noon to collect the next load. Its driver, Warren Dobb, carried an invoice listing 42 bundles. Clara counted 57 on the loading platform. "Stop the crane." She called. No one moved. She had been at Black Fern for less than 2 days. And the workers still saw a Voss coat before they saw the woman inside it. Clara climbed onto the wet platform and stood directly in front of the first bundle. "You can continue loading," she told the crane operator, "but you will have to lift me with the lumber." The machinery remained silent. Dobb pushed through the workers. "Get her out of the way. I have a schedule." Clara held up his invoice. "Your paper removes 15 bundles before they have even left the yard. I count what Portland tells me to count. Then Portland can send another driver. Dobb reached for the invoice, but Elias stepped between them. "You heard her," he said. The driver stared at Elias's scar and lowered his hand. Clara required every bundle to be unloaded and counted again before Tobias, Elias, Dobb, and 6 workers. There were 57. She prepared 3 identical receipts, numbered them, and made every witness sign across the lower edge, so no additional lines could be inserted. Dobb refused until Elias ordered the mill gate closed. Only then did he sign. Clara also added the value of the 15 omitted bundles to the balance due. With that correction, Black Fern had enough credit to cover Saturday's wages and purchase replacement chains from an independent supplier. When the wagon departed, the workers gathered around the office door. Clara showed them both counts and explained the altered invoices without asking them to trust her conclusions blindly. Tobias studied the documents for a long time. "My brother nearly lost his farm because of a debt calculated by Voss Timber," he said. "I believed everyone carrying that name was part of the theft." "So did I," Clara answered. That evening, workers who had avoided her at supper made room at the table. No one apologized. But Beatrice passed Clara the bread before serving Elias. At Black Fern, it seemed acceptance arrived through small actions rather than speeches. After the meal, Elias found Clara constructing a numbered receipt book from blank paper and thread. "You risked being lifted by a timber crane," he said. "I knew you would stop it. You could not have known that." Clara paused. He was right. She had acted from determination, not certainty. "I knew the missing 15 bundles mattered more than my comfort. They mattered because Saturday is payday." Elias said, 29 families depend on those envelopes." He placed a brass key beside her work. It opened the mill's main account cabinet. "You have earned access," he said. "Not ownership. Not complete trust. Access." For Clara, it was more than her father had granted after 12 years of service. She turned the key over in her palm. A number had been stamped into its bow, 214. Clara had seen that number before. She opened her hidden black ledger and found it beside 12 unexplained payments, marked B. F. R. Account 214 had received every dollar stolen from Black Fern, and according to her father's records, the account belonged to Elias Rourke. Elias read the entry twice before setting the black ledger on the desk. "I have never opened an account in Portland. The money was transferred under your name," Clara said. "If my father produces these records in court, he can claim you received the missing funds and invented the debt dispute to conceal your own theft." Elias moved toward the account cabinet, but his damaged hand failed to close around the key. He struck the cabinet door with his fist instead. Clara did not retreat. "Anger will not change the handwriting." "No, but it may keep me from being foolish enough to trust another Voss." The words cut more deeply because they were deserved. Clara closed her ledger and began returning her papers to the accounting case. Elias watched her. "What are you doing? You granted me access. Not complete trust. If that access has ended..." Saw. Rain pressed steadily against the windows. The mill had gone quiet for the night, leaving only the stove's iron ticking as it cooled. At last, Elias pulled out the chair opposite her. "Sit down," he said. "There is something you need to see." From the lowest shelf of the cabinet, he removed a scorched metal box. Inside lay a bank loan application dated May 1881. Elias had requested $2,000 to replace Black Fern's aging boiler and pressure valves. The application had been rejected, but his full signature appeared at the bottom. Pike handled the paperwork. Elias said he could have used this signature to open account 214. Clara studied the page. A rectangular section had been cut from its lower corner. "The witness certification is missing. It was there when I signed." What happened after the loan was denied? Elias looked through the office window toward the dark mill. The old pressure valve failed. The explosion killed his younger brother, Micah, and injured 4 workers. Elias had dragged 2 men from the boiler room before a burning roof beam struck his head. His left hand had been trapped beneath the collapsed valve housing, costing him 2 fingers. Harlan Voss offered to pay the injured families if Elias signed a supply agreement, granting Voss Timber exclusive control over Black Fern's freight and purchases. Elias accepted because the families needed money immediately. "Your father called it assistance," he said. By the end of the first year, every crate cost more. Every shipment earned less. And the mill owed him money it had never borrowed. "You blame yourself for signing. I blame myself for keeping the mill open after the loan was refused. Micah told me the valve would not last another winter." Clara examined his scarred hand. Elias had reacted to the broken chain so quickly because he had already watched defective machinery kill someone he loved. "My father trained me to believe that mistakes were debts," she said. "The more ashamed I felt, the easier I was to control. I spent years correcting his accounts because I believed usefulness might purchase safety. Did it? No. It only made me useful to an unsafe man." Elias's expression softened, though he did not offer easy reassurance. "My brother's death was not a debt you created," Clara continued. "But if you keep paying it with your own life, Harlan still profits from the explosion." Elias lowered his eyes to his injured hand. "And what debt are you still paying?" Clara almost answered with silence. Silence had protected her from mockery at dinner tables, in dress shops, and inside her father's office. It had also allowed Harlan to use her labor while pretending she possessed no authority. "I am still waiting for permission to believe my judgment," she admitted. Elias pushed the brass key back across the desk. "I cannot give you that permission. I know. But I can stop standing in its way." Together, they reconstructed how account 214 might have been created. Pike possessed Elias's signature. Harlan controlled the false transfers. And someone at Black Fern supplied shipment information. The intruder had known the office layout, which meant the conspiracy required a person inside the mill or a former worker familiar with it. Clara proposed sending 3 slightly different supply requests through 3 separate routes. Each version would contain a unique item that Black Fern did not actually need. Whichever false charge appeared in Portland's records would identify the source of the leak. Elias listened without interrupting. "When your 7 days end," he said. "What will you do?" Clara looked at the black ledger. The scorched loan application. And the key between them. Her father expected fear to drive her back to Portland, or obedience to keep her at Black Fern. For the first time, she understood that those were not her only choices. "I will stay until we can prove who created account 214. As my bookkeeper." Clara made his eyes. "As your partner in this investigation." Elias extended his scarred hand. This time, Clara took it without hesitation. Neither released the other immediately. On the 7th morning, a Voss courier arrived carrying Black Fern's updated debt statement. Clara opened it in front of Elias, Tobias, and Beatrice. The document included charges for 3 brass pressure gauges, supposedly requested 2 days earlier. Only one version of Clara's test order had mentioned those gauges. The copy given to Warren Dobb, Elias said. Dobb had carried Black Fern's freight for 3 years. He knew the mill schedule, the office layout, and the river stones that could conceal tracks in heavy rain. He also had access to every shipment count before the documents reached Portland. Tobias swore beneath his breath. He was here the night someone entered the office. His wagon left after dark. The test proved which route was compromised, but it did not prove Dobb had personally forged the accounts. Clara needed the chain connecting him to account 214. She examined the new statement. Beneath the false supply charge appeared a fee she had seen many times before. River Improvement Assessment, BFR Corridor. There had never been any river improvements. Clara gathered 3 years of invoices and marked every occurrence of the fee. The charges increased whenever Harlan purchased another tract of forest upstream. By late afternoon, the pattern covered the table. "Bring me the land maps," she told Elias. He unrolled a county survey across the desk. Harlan's 1,800 acres spread north of Black Fern in a long green block. The forest contained valuable Douglas fir, but steep ridges enclosed it on 3 sides. The only practical route for moving logs was down Black Fern River, through Elias's mill pond, and into the existing flume leading toward the lower valley. Without that corridor, Harlan's timber was nearly unreachable. He did not buy the forest and then decide he needed your mill. Clara said, he began falsifying your debts before his first land purchase. He planned to take Black Fern from the beginning. Elias placed the scorched loan application beside the map. The rejected boiler loan gave Pike my signature, and the explosion gave my father leverage over your supply contracts. After that, Dobb could undercount your shipments, while Pike added false expenses. The stolen difference was transferred into account 214 under your name. Then your initials were added to make the transfers look authorized inside Portland. Clara nodded. If Black Fern collapsed, my father could accuse you of stealing from your own mill. If anyone questioned the company records, he could blame me. The scheme had been constructed with 2 convenient criminals, a violent sawmill owner, already feared by the county, and an unmarried plus-size daughter her father had publicly described as unstable and greedy. Elias studied the map. How soon can he act? Clara turned to the final page of the debt statement. Her stomach tightened. The Voss company had demanded full payment by November 2. If Black Fern failed to produce $19,400, Harlan would petition the county court to appoint a receiver and auction the mill. They had 6 days. A commotion erupted in the yard before Clara could speak. Warren Dobbs' freight wagon had appeared at the mill gate. Elias reached for his rifle. No, Clara said. If you threaten him, he will repeat every story Portland already tells about you. He helped steal from 29 families, and he expects you to answer with violence. Let him find something else. Clara took the numbered receipts and walked outside. Dobb climbed down, wearing an easy smile. I am here for another load. You will receive nothing until you explain why Voss Timber charged us for pressure gauges, listed only on your copy of our order. His smile disappeared. I deliver papers. I do not write them. Then you will not object to showing us the dispatch book in your wagon. Dobb glanced toward Elias. You have no legal right to search my property. That is true, Clara said, so we will not search it. She turned to the waiting workers. No Black Fern lumber will be loaded onto this wagon. Mr. Dobb may leave whenever he wishes. Dobb climbed onto his seat. But instead of turning toward the river trail, he pulled a revolver from beneath his coat. Elias raised his rifle at the same instant, for 1 suspended second. Neither man fired. Then Dobb whipped the horses and drove through the open gate. As the wagon struck a rut, a leather dispatch pouch fell from beneath the seat. Clara picked it up but did not open it. Tobias and Beatrice signed a statement describing exactly where it had fallen. Only then did Elias cut the cord before all 3 witnesses. Inside were duplicate invoices, a wax impression of the office key, and a telegram addressed to Dobb from Edwin Pike. Keep Rourke at mill. Deputies will intercept woman on East Road. Auction notice filed. Complaint against C. V. Now active. Clara read the final line again. Her father had filed the embezzlement charge. If she went to the county court, she would be arrested. If Elias accompanied her, Pike's men were waiting to stop him. Harlan had closed both roads to justice before either of them could leave Black Fern. The attack began after midnight with the smell of smoke. Beatrice rang the boarding house bell as flames climbed the wall of the sawdust shed. Workers rushed from their beds carrying buckets, blankets, and shovels. Elias ordered Tobias to protect the boiler room while he led the others toward the fire. Clara remained in the office, securing the black ledger and Dobbs' dispatch pouch inside the account cabinet. Then she heard an axe striking metal near the mill pond. Through the window, she saw Warren Dobb beside the upstream log boom. 2 armed men were cutting through the boom's retaining cable, while the fire drew everyone to the opposite side of the yard. Nearly 100 logs floated behind that cable. If released together, they would crush the mill bridge and destroy the main saw. Clara ran outside. Elias. Dobb swung the axe again. The cable separated. The log boom opened, and the river began carrying the timber toward Black Fern. Elias turned from the fire. He immediately understood what was happening. Instead of chasing Dob, he ran toward the emergency spill gate. Opening it would divert much of the water into an older channel and strand the logs before they reached the mill. He seized the release wheel, but rust held it in place. Bars! Elias shouted. Bring iron bars. Clara counted the approaching logs as workers struggled with the wheel. The first cluster would reach the bridge in less than a minute. Tobias and 3 men forced an iron bar between the spokes. The wheel moved half a turn. A rifle cracked from the darkness. The bullet struck the wheel's iron rim, throwing fragments into Elias's shoulder. He staggered, but remained upright. Another shot tore through the wooden railing. Get down, Elias shouted. Clara crawled beneath the platform as the workers scattered. Elias stayed beside the wheel. With blood running down his arm, he forced the mechanism through another quarter turn. Water roared into the abandoned channel. The first logs struck the bridge. Wood exploded around them. One support post snapped, dropping half the platform into the torrent. Elias shoved Tobias toward solid ground before a broken beam struck him across the back and pinned him against the gate housing. Clara reached him as another group of logs collided with the mill. Leave me, he said, through clenched teeth. Get the ledger out. She tried lifting the beam, but it barely moved. Tobias returned with 2 workers. Together, they raised it enough for Clara to drag Elias free by his coat. His shoulder bled heavily, and each breath came short and uneven. He could not stand without assistance. Across the yard, Dobbs' men entered the office. Clara saw them carry out the main payroll books and freight records. One man threw a lantern through the window before running toward the horses. Flames spread across the office curtains. The black ledger was still inside. Elias caught Clara's wrist. No. That book is our only complete record. The roof is already burning. Clara looked at the office, then at Beatrice's wooden laundry trough beside the boarding house. Earlier that week, workers had filled it with rainwater to soak work clothes. Tip that water through the side window, she ordered. While Tobias and Beatrice pushed the trough toward the office, Clara wrapped herself in a wet wool blanket. She entered through the inner room door, staying below the smoke. The repaired latch, the private exit, and the exact location of the cabinet had all been established before the attack. She retrieved the ledger and dispatch pouch seconds before burning rafters collapsed across the desk. Outside, Elias had lost consciousness. Bedam. The sawdust fire was extinguished, but Black Fern was crippled. The bridge had partially collapsed. The main saw frame had twisted from its foundation, and the diverted river had flooded the lower yard. Dobbs' men had escaped with the official account books. Elias lay in Beatrice's room with a deep shoulder wound and 2 cracked ribs. The nearest doctor lived more than 20 miles away. Tobias prepared to ride for him, but the journey would take most of the day. Beatrice found Clara beside the damaged mill. You should leave before Pike comes, she said. Take Elias's gray mare and carry the evidence west. The east road will be watched. Clara looked at the workers gathering around their ruined livelihood. Without a working saw, Black Fern could not meet its contracts. Without the stolen account books, proving the false debt would be far more difficult. The auction was only 4 days away. She could escape with the black ledger and save herself. Instead, Clara removed the Voss coat, folded it once, and placed it in the mud. Send Tobias for the doctor, she said. Then gather every worker who remembers a missing shipment, a damaged supply, or a false charge. Beatrice studied her. What are you planning? My father stole the books, because he believes the books are the only evidence. Clara looked toward the 29 families emerging from the boarding houses. He forgot about the people who lived through every number. Before Tobias rode for the doctor, Clara gave him 6 telegrams addressed to lumber buyers who had purchased Black Fern timber. Each message listed branded bundle numbers from Tobias's yard book and asked the buyer to confirm how many bundles had arrived and how much money had been paid. By the time Tobias returned with Dr. Nolan the following evening, 5 replies were waiting at the telegraph office. Every buyer had received more lumber than Voss timber credited to Black Fern. One company had paid for 57 bundles from the most recent shipment. The same load Dobbs' invoice reduced to 42. For 2 days, Clara reconstructed the stolen accounts. Workers testified about missing supplies, substituted machinery, and unexplained deductions. Beatrice recorded each statement while Tobias and 2 others signed as witnesses. Elias remained confined to bed. The bullet fragments had been removed, but his cracked ribs made writing impossible. On the morning of the auction, Clara entered his room carrying the black ledger. "I should be going with you," he said. "You can barely cross this room. That has never stopped me before. Which is why you are staying." A faint smile touched his face. "You sound like the owner." "No. I sound like the bookkeeper who intends to make sure you remain the owner." Clara traveled to Cedar Crossing with Beatrice, Tobias, and 12 mill workers. They arrived at the courthouse 2 hours before the auction. Harlan Voss was already there with Edwin Pike, Warren Dobb, and 3 company attorneys. A deputy stepped toward Clara with an arrest warrant. She did not run. "He will surrender," she said. "After I file an emergency petition concerning the same money I am accused of stealing." Her refusal to panic created a problem the Voss attorneys had not anticipated. If the deputy arrested her without allowing the filing, every document in her possession would become evidence in the criminal case and could not quietly disappear. The circuit judge agreed to hear the petition before the auction. Inside the courtroom, Harlan described Clara as a resentful daughter who had joined Elias Rourke to conceal their theft. Pike submitted the company ledgers, showing Black Fern's $19,000 debt. Clara rose when the judge permitted her to respond. For most of her life, she had been taught to lower her voice, fold her hands, and apologize for occupying space. This time, she stood in the center of the courtroom and placed her papers across the largest table. She began with the 15 missing bundles. Tobias's yard book proved 57 had left Black Fern. Dobbs' invoice credited only 42. The buyer's telegram confirmed receiving and paying for all 57. Clara then presented the 3 test orders. Only Dobbs' copy mentioned pressure gauges. 2 days later, Voss Timber charged Black Fern for those exact gauges. Finally, she produced Dobbs' dispatch pouch, the wax impression of the office key, and Pike's telegram ordering him to keep Elias at the mill while deputies intercepted Clara. Dobb pushed back from the witness bench. "She stole that pouch. It fell from your wagon before 7 witnesses." Clara replied. The mill workers stood one by one. Harlan called them desperate men protecting their employer. Clara answered by producing confirmations from 5 independent buyers whose totals matched the workers' records. Pike attempted to place all responsibility on Dobb. Clara laid Elias's scorched loan application beside the account 214 entries. Mr. Pike handled this application. A section containing Elias Rourke's witnessed signature was cut from it. Soon afterward, an account was created in Rourke's name and used to receive money stolen from Black Fern. "That proves nothing," Pike said. "It proves enough to examine the bank's original account card." The judge ordered a subpoena issued to the Portland Bank and directed the sheriff to secure all Voss records connected to account 214. Harlan rose. "The auction is based on a lawful debt." "No," Clara said. "It is based on arithmetic." She opened her reconstructed account after removing false supplies, invented river assessments, omitted lumber, and duplicated freight fees. Black Fern owed Voss Timber nothing. According to the corrected balance, Voss Timber owed the mill $7,816. The courtroom fell silent. The judge suspended the auction, prohibited either company from removing Black Fern property, and placed the disputed records under court control. He also released Clara on her own recognizance while the embezzlement accusation was investigated. Outside, Harlan caught her arm. "You have destroyed your last chance to return home." Clara removed his hand. "You still believe Portland was my home." She handed the signed suspension order to Tobias. "Take this to Elias. As Tobias rode toward Black Fern, the courthouse clock struck noon, the exact hour Harlan had intended to sell the mill. Instead, for the first time in 12 years, Clara's accounting had cost her father more than it earned him. The court's investigation lasted through the winter. The Portland Bank produced the original documents for account 214. The witness certification attached to the account had been cut from Elias's rejected loan application. When the two pieces were placed together, the scorched edges matched. Withdrawal slips carried Edwin Pike's handwriting. Voss Company records seized under the judge's order showed that the stolen money had been used to pay interest on Harlan's 1,800 acres upstream. The evidence did not depend on a confession. It existed in bank dates, freight totals, altered receipts, telegraph records, and payments made to Warren Dobb. Dobb was charged with arson, destruction of property, and assault for the attack on Black Fern. Pike faced forgery and conspiracy charges. Harlan was indicted for fraud, false accounting, and arranging Clara's fabricated embezzlement accusation. Several investors tried to claim they had known nothing. Clara believed some of them. She also remembered their silence in the Portland meeting room when they offered private apologies. She requested written statements describing what Harlan had said and done. Remorse, she had learned, was most useful when entered into the record. The charge against Clara was formally dismissed in January 1885. The judge confirmed Elias's ownership of Black Fern and ruled that the Voss Company owed the mill $7,816, plus damages for the destroyed equipment and stolen shipments. Harlan's upstream forest was placed under lien until the judgment was paid. Without Black Fern's river corridor, the land produced no immediate revenue. The acquisition meant to complete his empire became the weight that pulled it apart. Justice did not repair the mill overnight. For weeks, workers operated a smaller backup saw while rebuilding the damaged bridge. Independent buyers advanced money against future lumber deliveries after Clara showed them Black Fern's new numbered receipt system. Every shipment now produced 3 matching records, one for the mill, one for the buyer, and one stored with a Cedar Crossing attorney. No single man could erase the truth again. Elias recovered slowly. The wound in his shoulder closed. But Dr. Nolan forbade him from lifting heavy timber until spring. Learning to give orders from a chair proved harder for him than facing armed men. Clara refused to perform helplessness, merely to make him feel useful. When he tried to inspect the rebuilt spill gate during a storm, she blocked the doorway with the account book. If you tear those ribs again, I will enter the medical expense under personal foolishness. That is not a recognized category. It is now. He returned to his chair. By March, Black Fern was cutting more lumber than before the attack. Tobias became safety foreman, while Beatrice managed the boarding house and workers' supply cooperative. Clara negotiated direct contracts with buyers, eliminating the freight system Harlan had used against them. Elias offered her a permanent salary. She declined. I do not want another man deciding what my work is worth. The following week, she presented a partnership agreement. Elias would retain ownership of the land he had inherited. Clara would receive half ownership of the mill operation in exchange for managing its accounts, contracts, and distribution, major debts, land transfers, and supply agreements would require both signatures. Elias read every line. You left space for amendments. Only if we both agree. He signed beneath her name. Spring reached Black Fern in April. Ferns unfolded beside the river, and workers replanted the slope damaged during the attack. The old office could not be saved. So Clara designed the replacement with 2 exits, a fireproof record room, and windows overlooking both the mill pond and loading yard. On the evening the new office opened. Elias found her hanging her mother's portrait above the account cabinet. The court had recovered it from the Voss mansion with Clara's other belongings. Will you miss Portland? He asked. I will miss the library, she said. Not the house. I can build shelves. Clara turned toward him. Is that an offer from my business partner? No. Elias removed a small wooden box from his coat. Inside was a plain gold ring. It is an offer from a man who knows you do not need rescuing, but hopes you might choose to build a life with him. Clara did not answer immediately. Elias waited without reaching for her. When I arrived, she said, "You gave me 3 choices. I remember. I choose to remain at Black Fern as your partner. I choose to marry you. And I reserve the right to correct your arithmetic for the rest of our lives." Elias smiled. Those terms seem severe. Read them carefully before signing. He placed the ring on her finger, only after she extended her hand. The next morning, Black Fern's rebuilt saw started beneath a clear Oregon sky. Clara sat at the long office table with workers, buyers, and her husband-to-be gathered around her. Before her lay the first ledger of the new partnership. On its opening page, written in Clara's own steady hand, were 2 names of equal size: Clara Voss, Elias Rourke.